Around the globe, the COVID-19 pandemic is profoundly reshaping the lives of billions of people. Its impact will be far-reaching and enduring, significantly influencing the theory and practice of public health and resulting in dramatic economic, political, and social changes. As part of the Dal Lana School of Public Health's 2020 course, Public Health Perspectives on COVID-19, we have invited those on the front lines of pandemic response in Canada to open a window for students into their reality. In this series of videos, Elli Weisbaum speaks with mindfulness practitioners around the world about the role that mindfulness plays in their work and day-to-day lives, especially as a result of the ongoing crisis.
So Valerie, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. It's always a gift to spend some time with you, even remote. And
glad to be here.
I'm glad today to have a chance to kind of explore the perspective of mindfulness and what role it might play in collective well-being and resiliency. And as a starting point, I wanted just to invite you to share a little bit on your perspective and lived experience of what the BIPOC community is, experiencing in relation to this global pandemic.
Well, thank you again, Elli, for being here. It's really a delight. I can share a tiny perspective. I obviously can't speak for the entire Black, Indigenous, and people of color community, but I can share observations of what I'm seeing, particularly in the United States. So the impact of COVID-19, the coronavirus, is not universal. What we've seen recently is that it really does impact these marginalized, low-income, and in particular Black communities in a very disproportionate way. So there was some really shocking research and shocking evidence that came out in Louisiana. That state reported that more than 75% of the people who died from the coronavirus were Black. In Chicago, 70 of the first 100 people who died were Black. And so what this says to me is that it is a result of practices and structures that have been put in place that disproportionately affect marginalized communities. And by structures and systems, I also mean laws that have allowed for redlining, environmental racism, segregationist policies, food insecurity, poverty. All of these things have created systems and structures that leave Black people in particular and BIPOC people in general at a disadvantage, with compromised health, and so much more susceptible to this virus.
And, as you kind of move through this time, I know that you are a big Sangha builder, a big community builder. What observations have you made in terms of challenges for communities to stay connected or to support one another, through a time where we're actually being asked to be in some sort of isolation?
Right. So this is a time that we're called to engage in social distancing, and many people are feeling the individual and a sense of collective trauma, which is real, and that may be exacerbated by this sense of isolation, this sense of not belonging. Not having a community, physical community of people to be around. And so this really requires a lot of us to call on strengths that feel like they're really being challenged right now. And for many Black people, BIPOC people, we don't have the luxury of social distancing. We're essential workers and have to support ourselves and our families. And so one of the things that I think we can do is to keep coming back to the sense of feeling grounded, feeling the ground underneath our feet, that I'm here, I'm solid, I'm present, I'm breathing, I am alive even in this moment, even with everything that's happening. And I think that that can be a very challenging practice, but to come back to the reality that I'm alive. One day early on in the pandemic, I went out for a walk, and someone just kind of gratuitously painted this beautiful rock in bright blue and placed it on the path. And the rock said, "I'm alive." And I've taken that as a kind of a mantra or a gatha or a prayer, that breathe in, I am alive. Breathe out, I am alive.
And you just touched on maybe some of the ways that mindfulness practice has been showing up for you to kind of come home to your breath, to come home to something like I am alive. And so, my next question is just, as we kind of look at the impact this has having on, many communities, what role do you see mindfulness playing, both at an individual level, but also more broadly, if we think about the lens of public health at a community level or a systems level?
Yeah, so mindfulness in a nutshell to me is about alleviating suffering. And we are in a time of great suffering. There are people who are dying, there are people who are dysregulated. This is both an individual and a collective suffering that we are experiencing. And so mindfulness as it's a big word for the process of coming back home to ourselves, in taking in a sense of ourselves, that what is happening here and now. So there's this, there's a kind of focusing element. There's an element of mindfulness that's accepting, that holds things as they are. And this is very resourcing and can be very healing for people who may all of their life have been told you don't belong. And then the other element that I think is really important about mindfulness that connects with public health is that the point, the ground of mindfulness, the point of mindfulness is that is this ethical component that, yes, we're here to resource ourselves and to create a better society. And so but we begin by supporting ourselves, like putting your oxygen mask on first. And then this person, as a person who is resourced, then we can work toward the good of all beings. And this is often forgotten, that this ethical component. And so I began by talking about some of the structural and systemic reasons that COVID-19 has disproportionately affected the BIPOC community. And it is from this more empowered place that we can work together to address systemic and structural disparities and public health inequities.
Well, thank you so much for sharing these thoughts. Hopefully this is just the beginning of a broader conversation that we can have to kind of explore how mindfulness can support both going in and going out. So I thank you for planting many seeds around that, and also looking forward in our other video to actually trying a practice. I heard you use that word a few times, so it'll be nice to actually hear you offer that. But before we close, if there's any kind of last thoughts you want to share.
Just a lot of gratitude and to this community for offering this time, and to recognize that we have within ourselves the resources that can help us to regulate our emotions and regulate the body and come back home to this sense of of the body, belonging, and being part of this amazing, beautiful world.
Well, thank you. I'll walk away today with that sense of belonging from you.
Thank you.